Hello. Today we're going to do a very interesting poem, a very ironic poem by the often enigmatic, by the often unclassifiable British poet Stevie Smith. It's called Marriage, I think. Now, a side note, but the first thing to know about Stevie Smith is that Stevie Smith is a female poet. So don't let the name fool you. The poem is called Marriage, I think. So let's go through the poem. Marriage, I think, for women is the best of opiates. Now, opiates is, of course, something that numbs, something that dulls, something that's like a drug that enables a person to cope with his or her condition. So marriage is an opiate. Why? You might say, of course, marriage dulls, marriage enslaves, right? So Stevie Smith is picking up on what I considered to be a common topic of reflection about marriage for women. Marriage is the best of opiates because it kills the thoughts that think about the thoughts. Of course, in these two lines, this idea of self-reflection is brought up. So the thoughts that think about the thoughts, that repetition, that of course implies that idea of self-reflection. So marriage is an opiate because it kills the thoughts that concern self-reflection, that allow women to think about their own role, that allow women to think about their own, perhaps subjugation, perhaps dehumanization in a marriage. So marriage, I think, for women is the best of opiates because it does what an opiate is supposed to do. It dulls, it numbs, kills the thought that think about the thoughts. It is the best of opiates. That repetition of the line, it is the best of opiates, helps in drumming home the point. But notice where the poem starts to become interesting. The next line says, "So said Maria." What's happening? The thoughts that supposedly seem universal, that have that almost sort of gnomic quality, that almost sort of universal appeal to it, is relativized because now it is filtered through a character. So said Maria. So now the skeptical reader in us is prompted to question, is what has been said a reflection of Stevie Smith, a reflection of the condition of women generally in marriage, or the reflection of some particular character, Maria? So the poem starts to become more complicated in that sense. So said Maria. So now we have a character. Now it is almost spoken as sort of a dramatic monologue. Now, of course, the dramatic monologue is a long tradition of poetry that starts in the 19th century. Robert Browning does the dramatic monologue very well. Now the dramatic monologue is used as a poetic vehicle to express the thoughts, the feelings and emotions of characters. Now these characters may be characters that the author doesn't really agree with or the author wants to ironize. So Stevie Smith is picking up on that ironic aspect of the dramatic monologue. So it is a poem that looks back at tradition, but it's a poem that also casts a kind of ironic look upon that tradition of love poetry, upon that tradition of the dramatic monologue. But too long in solitude she dwelt, and too long her thoughts have felt their strength. So why is Maria feeling this way? Because she's in solitude. So once again, the particular circumstances of this woman is highlighted. Too long in solitude she dwelt. So Maria is living a life, we might say, of deprivation. Maria is living a life of solitude. And we might think, are these the thoughts that chain her? So these thoughts might be a form of liberation for some women who feel trapped and suffocated and almost enslaved in marriage. But Stevie Smith ironically suggests that these thoughts might be the reason why Maria is feeling enslaved in an opposite way. But too long in solitude she dwelt, and too long her thoughts had felt their strength. So this repetition of too long. So she's with herself, she's with her thoughts, the thoughts of marriage being a sort of trap, being something that numbs, being something that dulls, being something that kills a person's individuality. So when the man drew close, so now Maria is filled in with this backstory of the man, a possible suitor, possible lover. So when the man drew near, out popped her thoughts and covered him with fear. So now these thoughts don't allow Maria to look at a man in a sort of objective, in a sort of positive way. These thoughts actually pop out of her head, almost covering that man with fear. So now Maria senses fear. Maria is not looking at the situation in a sort of detached, objective way. And these thoughts are influenced by her thoughts on marriage. So when the man draws near, all Maria can see is fear. All Maria can see is that man trying to use marriage, trying to use love as a way in which to numb her, to dull her, and again, to subjugate her. Poor Maria. So now we might say this is the voice of the author. But of course, the voice of the author is made that much more complicated. What is the relationship of Stevie Smith to Maria? Does the author sympathize with her? Or does the author put forth a kind of ironic distance from her and the character? Be unsure. So the poem starts to get a bit more complicated here. Poor Maria. Better that she had kept her thoughts on a chain. For now she's alone again and in pain. So this use of the word chain is again ironic in the sense that these thoughts, marriage is an opiate, marriage is enslaving, marriage is demeaning, marriage is dehumanizing, are the thoughts that are supposed to release her. They're supposed to give the woman a sense of identity. They're supposed to be able for her to identify herself outside of marriage. How ironic is it that these thoughts are now the thoughts that enslave her once again? She kept her thoughts on a chain. A second kind of enslavement. For now she's alone again and all in pain. So Stevie Smith sets up the almost tragic situation of Maria. What can she do? What is a woman to do with respect to the institution of marriage? Should she stay all alone because marriage is an opiate? Or do these very thoughts then deny her the chance of a fulfilled life through true love, through marriage? But now she's alone again and all in pain. So she's alone again. She's alone again with the thoughts. Is this a kind of liberation for her? Or is this another form of enslavement? She sighs for the man that went and the thoughts that stayed. So a contrast between the man that went away, between the man that wasn't allowed to get near her, between the man that had him all covered with fear because of her thoughts about marriage, and the thoughts that stayed to trouble her dreams by night and the dreams by day. So now the thoughts now give her pain. The thoughts trouble her dreams. By night, we might think about, some sort of dream, a dream of marriage, of finding true love, and the dreams by day. For now, she's alone again and all in pain. So that loneliness, that sense of isolation, that has been a result of her thoughts. Stevie Smith highlights the almost tragic role of Maria with respect to the institution of marriage. In a sense, is marriage a form of enslavement from which a woman desires freedom? Marriage is opiate. Marriage kills the thoughts that think about the thoughts. Marriage denies woman self-reflection about her own condition. So is it best to struggle against that? Is it best to be free? But in a sense, does this freedom imply a sort of enslavement? Not wanting to be tied down to marriage and therefore denying a person the chance of fulfillment, denying a person the chance of seeking out and achieving true love. So what is the status of a woman with relation to this institution of marriage? How does a woman define herself with respect to that institution? Stevie Smith, through her use of irony, allows us to consider these two positions. So Smith is writing a poem not only about women, but also about the social nature of marriage as an institution and how it defines the woman, how it defines people in relation to it and in opposition to it. So now we go back to Maria. She's alone again and all in pain. Her thoughts haven't given her any release. Her thoughts serve as a kind of entrapment once again. So we leave her with that sense of loss, that sense of regret. She sighs for the man that went and the thoughts that stayed. So the man goes away and it's her thoughts that stay with her. It's her thoughts that entrap her from the start to finish, to trouble her dreams by night and the dreams by day. So once again, the poem allows us to consider what is the relationship of Maria to marriage? What is the role of women? And by extension, what's the role of men in relation to the institution of marriage? And how does a woman like Maria define herself with this social institution called marriage? It's a deeply ironic poem, but I hope you see the irony is there for a reason. The irony is there to allow us to consider two very different alternatives and to maybe prompt us to think once again Are there any other sort of alternatives through which women can look at themselves, look at their identities, and think about marriage? Is marriage a form of enslavement? Are relationships between men and women defined in terms of domination and subjugation? Is that a positive way to think about the female identity, or is that another form of enslavement? Is that another way in which women trap themselves ideologically? Thank you for listening. This has been How to Read a Poem.